Hello and welcome back to Deck Doctor. This week I'm going to be covering another blue deck, Mono Blue Dream Reaver. This is a control deck that uses the Dream Reaver card as a combo finisher to be able to take your opponents down to 10 life and then finish them off with a combination of either Dream Reaver and Ninja Toad or Dream Reaver and Gabrian Enchant. Now this is a control deck. You are going to be controlling the board, developing a lot of lakes, and eventually you'll be able to drop your Dream Reaver, dash within range of their orb, and be able to finish them off. This deck packs a lot of removal, a lot of transform, a bit of everything really. That's the nice thing about it. It's got a lot of cards from the blue arsenal. It all gels together really well and makes a very solid control deck. So let's talk about the cards and see what they do. These are the early game creatures that are going to collect Faeria for you when you start out. Sturdy Shell is fantastic. It can swim. It can go to the opposite side of where your opponent's building a land and collect Faeria uncontested. But it can also be developed into a strong threat with a Gabrian enchantment, making it a 5/5, where it can challenge most early game creatures. Water Elemental, again, another fantastic harvester. Jump is a great mechanic for collecting Faeria, but it also develops that additional lake. You need a lot of lakes for this deck, so being able to play an additional lake without using your power wheel is always really handy. Last but not least, we have Battletoads, one of the best cards in the game, I would say. It gives you two 2/2 jump creatures, and they can collect Faeria for you. They can be combined with Aurora, Mirror Phantasm to help influence the board. And it's just a great comeback card. If you are behind, if you're top decking and you're low on Faeria, you can produce 3 Faeria +1 into Battletoads, and this gives you a good chance to come back in a match. Aurora is a fantastic card, one of the best legendaries in the game, if not the best legendary in the game. It's going to be able to turn those smaller creatures, which I just talked about, into real threats, and it can also help you push lethal if you have a Ninja Toad, so a lot of great combos with Aurora in this list. Ancient Herald has a great effect, which is going to affect a lot of creatures. It affects Sturdy Shell, it affects Dream Reaver, Beirut, affects other Ancient Herald, so a great card. 6 Faeria for a 5/6 is very strong, and you've probably ran into enough ground shakers in your time to know that is a great stat line. Last but not least, we have Beirut, a real threat against some decks. Red and green really struggle with Beirut. Yellow and blue, on the other hand, do have the answers. They have Last Nightmare, they have Transform, but if you can slot this in against the right deck, it can do major damage. So Beirut, fantastic option for a nice slow control deck. Ninja Toad is a piece of removal. It's a bit like Wind Soldier in that respect. It can collect Faeria for you. It can remove a threat. If you combine it with Aurora or Frogify, you can take out some pretty good stuff. But it also acts as a finisher. If you Dream Reaver your opponent and your Dream Reaver lives and it's next to their orb, you can hit them for 7 and then play the Ninja Toad to finish them off. Frogify, what can I say about this card? Best transform in the game. It's very cheap for what it does. It can take care of any threat, and yeah, it's just a fantastic card. Now, Mirror Phantasm is great because it gets cost reduced by the Ancient Herald. It's a very strong card combined with the early Harvesters, but there's one thing you should know. Now, Ninja Toad has haste, but he will lose haste if you transform him into a 5/5 Phantasm, so he doesn't keep the haste, he will lose it, so keep that in mind when trying to play that combo. The Emperor's Command, time and time again, shows up in my Deck Doctors. Such a fantastic card. Healing, structure removal, and reducing power from creatures is fantastic, so I won't cover this too much because we've talked about it time and time again. Radiance, on the other hand, is an amazing card in this deck, and the reason is, not only does it heal you, but it also gives you an alternate win condition. Now, if you are able to play Radiance and dash it towards your opponent's orb and they cannot remove it, you can one-shot them with a Dream Reaver on the following turn. So a very powerful card for its body, for its dash, for its heal to keep you in the game, because you're going to be taking damage not from only your opponent, but Forbidden Libraries as well. And it's also a great finisher when combined with the Dream Reaver. Forbidden Library is probably one of the most important cards in this type of deck because you build a lot of lakes, so you're able to get it down quite quickly, but it's going to accelerate your card draw and Faeria to a point where you can play Dream Reaver quite comfortably and it has great synergies with Radiance. You draw additional cards which are going to heal you, and you take damage to reduce its cost. So Forbidden Library will often play a big role in how you win matches. Last but not least, we have Gabrian Enchantment. I've already talked about some of the synergies you can use with this, the Sturdy Shell. You can also use it on Ancient Herald to push it to a 6/6. You can combo with the Dream Reaver for your finisher. Sometimes it's worth actually playing Enchantment on Dream Reaver straight away, because if your opponent deals damage to your Dream Reaver, you won't be able to one-shot them off its gift ability. Now, another way you can use Gabrian Enchantment as well is using it on your opponent's creatures when they have low life and a high attack, and you can bring that attack right down, which you can then manage those creatures easier. Our final card is the Dream Reaver. It's a card that brings this deck together. It's a very pricey card at 7 Lake, 7 Faeria, but it is a 7/10 with dash 3, meaning it can get into advantageous positions very easily, but also its gift, set a god's life to 10, and that is any god. So you can heal yourself with this, but you can also set up cheeky lethals with the Dream Reaver enchantment, the Dream Reaver Ninja Toad, and of course Radiance if you do have that card down. So this card is very good. Has a lot of flexibility, and its body alone is very threatening, and some decks are not going to be able to deal with this. Green and red are going to struggle with a 7/10, especially when you enchant it up to a 10/10. It can pretty much kill anything. It can kill Faeria Golems and still live to tell the tale. So a very, very strong card, and it's, like I said, it's what brings this deck together. For your mulligan, you're going to want to find an early harvester, start collecting Faeria for you. This is very important because your deck can be quite Faeria intensive when you don't have those Forbidden Libraries down. You have Mirror Phantasms to pay for, as well as the Ancient Heralds. So it's very important you start collecting early, and all these cards are fantastic at doing that. Water Elemental and Battletoads are kind of MVPs because you can set up 2 harvesters or you set up additional lakes. But Sturdy Shell is also very good as well because you can play it turn 1 and then on turn 2 it can collect immediately. Now, if you do find one of these harvesters, other great options are Forbidden Library. Now, Forbidden Library, I would say you keep pretty much in every hand, unless your hand is really dead. This card really pushes this deck to a very much higher power level because you draw so many cards, you gain so much additional Faeria. It allows you to overwhelm your opponent very quickly and set up that Dream Reaver kill. Ancient Herald's not too bad as well if you don't have any of the creatures I mentioned earlier. The Ancient Herald can be played turn 2, and it's quite bulky, so it's probably going to stick to the board. Now, if you do find one of the smaller harvesters, Phantasm is also a really good keep because you can Phantasm it into a 5/5, maybe catch your opponent off guard, kill a weaker creature, and maybe 2 for 1 after that. And you gain 2 5/5s. That's really strong about Phantasm, and it's a great card to gain early tempo, especially if your opponent's being aggressive. I'm sure you guys like what you hear, but how much does this deck cost? It is a control deck, so they do come quite pricey. The control archetype is at 1,770 Memoria, has 3 legendaries, 7 epics, 10 rares, and 10 commons, so those legendaries and epics are going to add up. I do have some replacements for you. Now, it's harder to get rid of Aurora and Radiance because they do play a huge role in the list, but you can get rid of Beirut. Now, Beirut can be replaced for another Dream Reaver. If you can't afford another Dream Reaver, maybe try another Ninja Toad, maybe try something else, Gabrian Warden maybe. But Dream Reaver is the perfect card to replace it with, but there are many options in blue where you can make that sub. If you haven't got the Emperor's Command yet, and I do recommend crafting them as soon as possible. They are very good cards, and they do feature in a lot of decks. You can use Healing Song instead. Now, Healing Song isn't as good as Emperor's Command, but it does draw you that card, and that card can help you manage the board. It can do a lot of things for you, card draw. So the card draw is welcome, but the utility of Emperor's Command is much stronger. But this is a very cheap replacement for Emperor's Command, and I think Healing Song works fine. It's what Dream Reaver decks used to use before Emperor's Command was printed. Let's look over the strengths and weaknesses. Great cards from early game to late. You have fantastic harvesters, fantastic mid-game cards like Ancient Herald and Phantasm, and then you finally have Dream Reaver and Radiance and Beirut to finish things off. So just very strong deck overall. Dream Reaver is a great win condition. You can one-shot your opponent after playing it, but it also gives those red and green decks a lot of trouble. So if you are seeing a lot of red and green, Dream Reaver might be right for you. Now, Faeria and card acceleration from Forbidden Library. This runs 3 copies of Forbidden Library. That's how important the card is, but it really snowballs you ahead. If they can't deal with your library, you're gaining an additional 2 Faeria per turn and a card, and the damage you do to yourself helps synergize with Radiance, making it cheaper, one of your alternate win conditions. So Forbidden Library, a very powerful card, and I think the Dream Reaver decks utilize it the best. Now, if you lose board control, it can be very hard to come back. Like blue, many other blue decks, blue needs initiative in order to maintain board control. This makes a deck like Yellow Tempo quite difficult to deal with. It also makes rush decks quite difficult to deal with, especially if they clear harvesters in the early game. Libraries can backfire. Now, if you set up too many libraries or you set a library at the wrong time, that damage can kill you against the right deck. So burn and rush can have a lot of fun when there's a library down. They can accelerate their win condition because they're just trying to kill you as quickly as possible. You can get overwhelmed before Dream Reaver is playable. Now, Dream Reaver is your win condition. There are a lot of great cards in this deck for you to maintain board presence, but if you do get overwhelmed, it's very hard to come back. Battletoads is pretty much your best comeback card, but if it gets removed by popular removals like Soul Drain, Cypher's Wrath, to name a few, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Now, you're going to have great matchups against Green Yellow Sack. Green Yellow Sack is really hurt by this list. You do very well against Blue Jump as well. You kind of have better cards than Blue Jump in the late game. So if you can outlast them, if you can get rid of those Wave Crash Colossus and that Beirut through your transform effects or by just using creatures on board, you have a far better late game. And it's much easier for you to stabilize, I feel, because you have more copies of library. So if you get a library down before the Blue Jumper and they can't handle it, you're probably going to win from that position. Now, like I said, Yellow Tempo, Burn, and Rush are all decks that are going to give you a lot of trouble. So if you are seeing these around your metagame, Dream Reaver might not be the best deck to be using, but it does have, like I said, great matchups against Jump and Sack. So if you are seeing those lists, you're going to be loving this deck. For land placement, you want to be building from the side of your orb and collecting from your own wells. That's how you're going to start the match. You want to collect Faeria, just play defensively, but eventually you're going to want to push lakes up towards your opponent. You want to be able to set up a Dream Reaver play where you can dash the Dream Reaver next to your opponent's orb and hopefully find a lethal. Now, this is the ideal lake pattern. It won't always go like this. You might have to squeeze in some neutrals. You probably have to adapt to how your opponent is building their lands, but in an ideal world, you'll build lakes straight up the side, and then you'll be able to dash your Dream Reaver towards your opponent and finish them off. Now, be careful when playing your libraries. You don't want to play libraries in spots you want to summon creatures or collect Faeria from. So don't play your libraries next to Faeria wells unless you have jump creatures that can jump over them. So be very careful with that placement. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Build to the side of your wells, eventually put up, and then find the win with the Dream Reaver. That wraps up this episode of Deck Doctor. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been having a lot of fun with Dream Reaver on ladder recently. I almost hit rank 5 today, but I'm hoping to make that push during the week or possibly next week. If you do like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and of course subscribe if you haven't already, and then you can keep up to date for when my content goes live and have plenty of it coming out on this YouTube channel. If you'd like to know more about Faeria, you can find excellent guides over at the hub, faeria.com/the-hub. You can find all the latest decks, guides and articles, not only from myself, but other community members as well. So until next time guys, take care and have a great day.